Far back in time, more than 30,000 years ago, the Earth lies in the grip of an ice age. Great sheets of ice cover vast portions of the northern hemisphere. Mountains wear white crowns that stretch far down into valleys. Oceans retreat as water is locked away in frozen mass, and coastlines grow wider. Step by step, the world reshapes itself into a colder, drier place. What seems fixed in our own age is, in this moment, a shifting landscape. Across Eurasia, humans adapt to these changes. Bands of hunter-gatherers wander rivers, coasts, and uplands, seeking food and shelter. Their lives are tied to the rhythm of seasons, the migration of animals, and the fruiting of plants. To the east, in the vast region that will one day be called China and Korea, people settle near estuaries and deltas. The sea lies lower, revealing wide stretches of tidal flat where shellfish abound. Farther north, the land bridge that later becomes the Korean peninsula narrows toward the seas that guard Japan. At this time, the Japanese archipelago does not look quite as it does today. The islands are larger, their shorelines stretched outward by the fall of the sea. Between them and the mainland lies a patchwork of shallows, straits, and exposed land. Some passages are crossable on foot when the water is at its lowest, but others remain channels of deep, fast current. The Tsushima Strait, between Korea and Kyushu, still flows. The Soya Strait, between Hokkaido and Siberia, opens and closes with the pulse of ice and water. To the south, the Okinawa island chain links toward Taiwan, offering a broken bridge of stone and coral. The global sea level stands more than 100 meters below modern heights. To imagine this change, one might picture entire continental shelves turned to dry land. Where Tokyo Bay now spreads its waters, there are plains and rivers. Where the Seto Inland Sea lies, fertile valleys stretch unbroken. In those valleys, rivers carve routes toward the ocean, carrying fish, reeds, and waterfowl. These shifting borders offer both opportunity and obstacle. Humans see land that never existed before, yet they also confront new seas that must be crossed to reach what lies beyond. Climate defines not only geography, but also the creatures that move across it. In the cold north, woolly mammoths graze steppe tundra, accompanied by wild horses and great elk. Their herds wander plains that extend from Siberia into Hokkaido. Farther south, in temperate Kyushu, forests hold deer, wild boar, and bear. Birds nest in branches above, while rivers teem with salmon and trout. Along the shores, shellfish gather in beds so dense that later humans will leave heaps of discarded shells that archaeologists still uncover. Each region offers different food, different materials, and different challenges. Archaeological finds reveal the presence of humans on these islands by at least 30,000 years ago. In sites such as Kanedori in Honshu and Fukui Cave in Kyushu, stone tools have been unearthed that match this time frame. Long, slender blades of obsidian show careful workmanship. Their source lies in volcanic outcrops, some many kilometers away. This means people not only survived here, but also traveled long distances to gather what they needed. Obsidian, sharp and brittle, could slice hides and carve wood. Its presence speaks of planning, skill, and persistence. The Cold Age also shapes vegetation. Much of northern Japan is covered in open grasslands and sparse woodland, suited for grazing herds. In contrast, southern Japan shelters pockets of temperate forest with oak and chestnut. These woods provide nuts, timber, and cover for animals. Seasonal cycles of growth and dormancy guide human foraging. People learn which valleys offer edible roots, which ridges draw migrating deer, which coasts give clams after a storm. Survival is not random. It is knowledge repeated, remembered, and passed down. A lesser-known detail is that the Japanese islands, even at this time, are part of larger patterns of movement across East Asia. In Honshu, obsidian artifacts have been traced back to sources on Kozushima, an island that can only be reached by crossing open water. These artifacts date tens of thousands of years old, long before farming, long before metal. They suggest people managed some form of seafaring far earlier than once believed. The question of how they traveled, by raft, by logboat, or by lashings of bamboo, remains open. Yet the evidence is undeniable. Humans crossed seas to gather stone. The mysteries multiply. Was Japan settled once, in a bold push across the straits, or several times, in small and scattered landings? Were the first to arrive few in number, or did many families venture together? Some scholars propose migration from the north, through Hokkaido, where cold steppes stretched close to Siberia. Others imagine entry from the south, island by island, through the Ryukyu chain. Each theory fits fragments of evidence, yet none alone explains all. The truth may be complex, layered across generations. On the planetary scale, these human steps echo patterns seen across the globe. At the same time that groups enter Japan, others walk into Australia, into Europe, into the edges of Siberia. Everywhere, humans adapt to new lands revealed by falling seas. The Earth is colder, yet in that cold it offers bridges and passages. Ocean currents shift. Wind belts swing southward. Deserts spread, and rain belts shrink. Whole regions bloom or wither depending on how ice advances or retreats. Humans are small against such forces, yet they find paths where land and sea allow. Step by step, the stage is set. The world of 30,000 years ago is one of extremes: ice and forest, sea and plain, danger and abundance. On the horizon, islands lie waiting. Their mountains rise blue in the distance, their coasts lined with unfamiliar trees. Few eyes yet gaze upon them. But soon, from scattered shores on the mainland, people will see across the straits. They will wonder if it is possible to go farther. They will test the waters, cross the boundaries of their world, and leave marks that endure beneath soil and stone. Along the eastern edge of the great continent, human groups gather where rivers meet the sea. The year is still deep within the last ice age. Winters are long, summers are cool, and the sea stands far below its modern level. What we now call the Yellow Sea and the East China Sea are wide expanses of exposed coastal plain. In this broad land, freshwater rivers carve through fertile mudflats, creating estuaries that teem with fish, shellfish, and waterfowl. These places draw humans again and again, for food, for stone, for shelter from wind. Families move slowly along these shores. They carry little more than what can be held in arms: baskets woven of reeds, hides sewn with sinew, stone blades wrapped in fiber. Step by step, they follow the lines of rivers outward. The rhythm of their lives is set by tides, seasons, and the movement of animals. When fish run upriver, they camp by the shallows. When birds migrate, they snare them in reeds. When roots and nuts ripen, they move inland. This patient circulation sustains them year after year. Archaeology tells us that these people are skilled tool makers. In sites scattered across northern China and the Korean peninsula, blades of stone show precise flaking. By 30,000 years ago, long, narrow points appear. chipped on both sides to create sharp cutting edges. Some are hafted into wooden shafts, forming spears or knives. Others are small flakes used for scraping hides. The presence of these tools across a wide area shows shared traditions, carried by groups as they spread and met one another. Knowledge does not stand still. It travels with people, across valleys and over plains. Nearer the sea, shells lie in heaps, the remains of countless meals. Later generations will leave vast shell middens in Japan, but even before, similar traces appear on the continent. Clams, oysters, and mussels provide a steady source of protein. Their collection requires little more than hands and patience. Yet, beyond diet, shells sometimes appear pierced as beads or pendants. Archaeologists have found marine shells transported many kilometers inland, far from the coast. Such finds suggest not only sustenance, but symbolism. People carry fragments of the sea with them, perhaps as ornament, perhaps as memory. The mainland landscape is a patchwork of environments. Inland plains hold herds of deer and wild cattle. Forests provide boar, nuts, and berries. Marshes swarm with fish and birds. Along the coast, mudflats stretch for kilometers, exposed by the retreat of the sea. In spring and summer, these flats grow with reeds, attracting waterfowl. In autumn, nuts fall heavy from trees, and people gather them for roasting. Each environment offers different food at different times. To survive here means to know the cycles, to remember them, and to pass that memory along. Among these groups, fire is constant. At night, it warms bodies against the chill of glacial winds. By day, it smokes fish, dries meat, and hardens wooden points. Evidence of ancient hearths lies buried in layers of soil, dark stains of charcoal, flecks of burnt bone. These marks tell archaeologists that families paused here, cooked meals, and slept near the glow of flame. Fire binds the camp, keeping predators at bay, creating a circle of light in an immense dark landscape. The path toward Japan begins in such places. As people spread across these fertile coasts, some gaze eastward. On clear days, from high ridges, they may glimpse distant landforms beyond the horizon haze. The straits are narrow, but still filled with strong current. To reach them requires courage, or perhaps necessity. Was it hunger that drove them? Curiosity? Or the slow push of population, pressing groups to seek new ground? Archaeologists cannot yet answer. What is clear is that by 30,000 years ago, some made the crossing. A lesser-known clue comes from obsidian. This volcanic glass is found in Japan on islands such as Kozushima. Yet tools made from Kozushima obsidian have been discovered on Honshu, dating tens of millennia ago. To gather this stone, people must have reached the island itself, separated from the mainland by water. This suggests not just settlement of Japan, but movement across seas before farming, before metal, before complex ships. Obsidian flakes speak quietly, but firmly. These were people willing to cross boundaries. Still, mysteries remain. Were the first to reach Japan from the Korean peninsula across the Tsushima Strait? Or did they come through the northern route, from Siberia into Hokkaido, crossing the Soya Strait during glacial lows? Another possibility is the southern arc, through the Ryukyu Islands from Taiwan. Each route is plausible. Each has evidence, but none can yet be proven alone. Genetic studies hint at multiple streams of ancestry, but the record is incomplete. The first crossings remain one of prehistory's unanswered questions. On the planetary scale, these movements form part of a much larger pattern. Across the globe, Humans of this age expand into lands newly revealed by falling seas. In Europe, they spread into glacial valleys. In Siberia, they advance along Mammoth Steppe. In Southeast Asia, they sail or raft toward islands of Sunda and Sahul. Everywhere, the lowering of seas creates both paths and barriers. Earth itself dictates the routes of humanity, offering opportunity and constraint in equal measure. Along the mainland shores, the people of East Asia gather, prepare, and move. Their world is one of cycles, tides rising and falling, animals migrating, seasons repeating. Yet within that cycle, slow changes unfold. Glaciers advance, then retreat. Forests spread, then contract. Rivers shift their courses, and coastlines creep outward. Against these immense changes, humans appear small, yet their decisions to walk, to gather, to cross water, carry forward across millennia. From these shores, the path leads toward Japan, toward the first steps on new land. At the close of the last ice age, the planet's oceans rest far below their present shorelines. So much water is locked in glaciers that continents stretch outward, exposing shelves of sand and stone that had long rested beneath the waves. Across East Asia, plains spread where seas will one day return. Rivers flow farther, carving new paths toward a coast that lies many kilometers beyond its modern line. Yet even in this world of extended land, the Japanese archipelago remains apart. Channels of fast and deep water still divide it from the continent. These straits, narrow but persistent, stand as the final barriers to human arrival. The most significant of these passages is the Tsushima Strait. Today, it measures about 50 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. 30,000 years ago, when seas lay more than 100 meters lower, its breadth was reduced, yet it never vanished. The strait carried strong tidal currents, fed by the inflow of what would become the warm Tsushima Current. Crossing it required more than wading or walking. Even at the coldest glacial maximum, water still flowed between Korea and Kyushu, cutting the Japanese islands away from the mainland. Farther north, the Soya Strait separated Hokkaido from Sakhalin, and beyond it, Siberia. This strait was narrower still, at times perhaps bridged by ice or shallow channels. Its waters, however, were frigid, stirred by polar currents. For humans accustomed to steppe and taiga, this passage may have been more accessible, though harsh in climate. To the south, the Ryukyu Islands stretched like stepping stones from Taiwan toward Kyushu. Yet between each lay gaps of open water, channels too wide to cross on foot. Together, these routes offered possibilities, but none without challenge. Archaeological evidence suggests that people did indeed cross such straits. Obsidian artifacts found in Honshu, sourced from islands like Kozushima, confirm that humans managed sea travel by 30,000 years ago. These stones, sharp and volcanic, could only be acquired by crossing channels of water. This fact alone demonstrates that early humans were not confined by visible land. They were capable of venturing into uncertain seas, guided perhaps by the faint outline of distant mountains, or by the knowledge passed from one group to another. The question remains, how did they cross? No boat survives from this era. Wood and fiber decay quickly, leaving no trace after millennia. Yet indirect clues exist. In other regions of the world, by similar dates, humans reached islands in Wallacea, crossing gaps even wider than those in East Asia. Simple rafts of lashed logs or dugouts hollowed by fire could have sufficed. Bamboo, abundant in parts of East Asia, might have provided buoyant poles tied together into floating platforms. None of these can be proven, Yet their possibility is supported by logic and precedent. For those first voyagers, the sight of Japan across the straits must have been striking. On clear days, Kyushu rises as a blue silhouette above the horizon. Its volcanic peaks send columns of cloud skyward, visible from afar. To the north, the ridges of Hokkaido emerge faintly across cold waters, dark against the expanse of sky. From the southern islands, the next landform is often visible as a hazy line. The temptation, or necessity, to reach these lands must have been powerful, perhaps driven by dwindling food, or by the search for stone, or simply by the restlessness of human groups. The decision was made to cross. On the mainland side, people would have gathered resources before such attempts. Stone tools were prepared, food was dried or smoked, and fire was carried in embers. Archaeologists have found hearths near ancient coastlines, blackened soil that marks places of long use. These sites, once beside rivers and tidal flats, lay far inland today, buried beneath modern fields. In their time, they were staging grounds, places where humans paused, observed the sea, and prepared to move forward. A lesser-known observation is the role of animals in this story. Herds of deer and boar often swam narrow channels between islands and peninsulas. Even in recent centuries, deer have been recorded crossing straits in East Asia. It is possible that ancient humans saw such events. Watching animals swim across waters may have revealed the feasibility of crossing. If deer could reach the other shore, perhaps people too could find a way, aided by rafts or logs. Such observations, humble as they seem, may have encouraged attempts at seafaring. Mysteries endure. Did the earliest crossings happen by accident, with people swept out by storm or tide, landing unexpectedly on distant shores? Or were they deliberate, with rafts constructed and aimed toward visible land? Some scholars argue for intentionality, pointing to the repeated presence of obsidian from specific island sources. Accidental drift could explain a single arrival, but not consistent transport over centuries. Others remain cautious, noting how little direct evidence survives. The truth may lie between first crossings accidental, later journeys planned with growing skill. On the planetary scale, these narrow straits mirror challenges faced by humans elsewhere. In Southeast Asia, channels separated Sunda from Sahul, requiring long voyages. In Europe, the Strait of Gibraltar blocked passage between continents. In the Americas, rivers and mountains presented barriers no less daunting. Everywhere, humans encountered thresholds, places where land ended and uncertainty began. Sometimes they turned back. Sometimes they crossed. Each success expanded the human map, opening new habitats, new challenges, and new futures. 30,000 years ago, the narrow seas around Japan formed one such threshold. They were not vast oceans, but neither were they trivial streams. They were barriers that demanded imagination, courage, and persistence. In crossing them, humans extended their range into islands that would one day sustain rich and complex cultures. The barriers themselves became part of the story, reminders that even in a world reshaped by ice, some distances could not be bridged without human ingenuity. On days when the air clears and haze lifts from the sea, distant landforms rise into view. From the coasts of the continent, across the narrowed seas of the late Ice Age, faint outlines of islands appear. Mountains stand like blue shadows on the horizon, peaks of Kyushu, ridges of Hokkaido, and the chain of the southern Ryukyus emerge as promises of land. For humans who live by rivers and estuaries, these glimpses are powerful. They reveal that the world does not end at the water's edge. Beyond the tide lies more: forests, rivers, and stone waiting to be known. These sightings occur along many points. From the Korean peninsula, one can sometimes see across the Tsushima Strait to the mountains of Kyushu. In the north, from Sakhalin, the low coast of Hokkaido may shimmer faintly. Far to the south, from the high ground of Taiwan, the Ryukyu Islands line the sea like stepping stones. Each view is fleeting, changing with season and weather. Clouds obscure them, fog hides them, but then, on clear mornings or after storms, they appear again. Such recurring visions cannot be ignored. They enter memory, story, and decision. For people of 30,000 years ago, the horizon is both limit and invitation. Each band of hunter-gatherers knows its own territory well: the valleys of rivers, the flats of coasts, the forests of low hills. Yet the horizon suggests something more. A dark line of mountain beyond the sea might hold animals not yet hunted, stones not yet gathered, plants not yet known. It might also hold dangers, predators, strange terrain, or nothing at all. The glimpse is a question. To move toward it requires choice. Archaeologists studying early settlement of Japan recognize these glimpses as critical. The fact that obsidian from Kozushima appears in mainland sites means that distant land was not only seen, but reached. Kozushima lies almost 30 kilometers from the nearest coast. It cannot be spotted every day, but in the right conditions, it rises clear. To see it is to know it exists. To know it exists is to imagine reaching it. The chain of thought begins with the horizon. The visual connection between lands is a bridge of its own. Human eyes, adapted for detail, can detect mountains far across open water. At sea level, the curvature of the earth hides much, but when one climbs a hill or ridge, the distance of vision extends. A peak of 1,000 meters can be seen from over 100 kilometers away in perfect conditions. Thus, the natural topography of Japan, its volcanic cones and sharp ridges, ensured that it was not invisible. It was always there, waiting to be glimpsed by those who knew when and where to look. The importance of these sightings lies not only in navigation, but in imagination. Crossing water is a risk. Without knowing that land exists beyond it, few would attempt the journey. Yet once land is glimpsed, the risk changes. It becomes a destination. The raft or canoe is not set adrift into emptiness, but aimed toward a visible goal. The chance of success grows. What begins as a faint shadow across the horizon becomes a marker of direction, a beacon that draws the brave, the hungry, or the curious. A lesser-known detail is how knowledge of horizons spreads between groups. Hunter-gatherers live in bands, but they do not live in isolation. They meet at rivers, they share food, they exchange stone. In these exchanges, stories also move. One band may describe the sight of mountains across the sea. Another may tell of animals that swim between islands. Such accounts pass from voice to voice, shaping collective awareness. Even those who have never seen the islands themselves may hear of them, imagine them, and prepare to reach them. Still, much remains uncertain. Did the first groups to Japan deliberately set sail toward lands they saw? Or did storms sweep them away, carrying them by chance to islands they had only heard of? Archaeologists debate this point. The repeated movement of obsidian suggests planning, yet no boats survive to prove the method. Drift models show that storms could push rafts from the mainland to Kyushu in a matter of days. Both deliberate and accidental journeys remain possible. The glimpses across the horizon are certain, but the decisions they inspired remain hidden in silence. Planetary forces frame these human choices. The Earth's tilt and orbit bring cycles of cold and warmth, expanding and shrinking the ice sheets. When ice grows, sea levels fall, exposing new land. When ice retreats, seas rise, drowning plains and severing connections. Horizons shift with these changes. What can be seen one millennium may vanish the next beneath water or haze. For people 30,000 years ago, the horizon is not fixed. It is a moving edge, altered by the slow breathing of the planet itself. To stand on the mainland shore and gaze outward is to feel both smallness and possibility. The sea glitters, restless with current. Above it, faint shapes hover, real and unreal. They are near enough to imagine, but far enough to resist certainty. In those moments, the human mind stretches outward. It considers what lies beyond. It weighs risk and reward. It plants the seed of migration. These glimpses, fragile and shifting, carry the weight of transformation. They are the first step toward the peopling of Japan. The last ice age reshapes the continents. Sea levels fall more than 100 meters below those of today, revealing wide coastal plains. Yet even in this world of exposed land, the Japanese islands remain cut off. Narrow straits still run with powerful currents, their waters flowing between continent and archipelago. To reach Japan, humans must attempt something new. They must cross the sea. These crossings are not long by modern measure, tens of kilometers at most, but for people without sails, compasses, or metal, they mark a profound step. They are the first water crossings into the land that will become Japan. Archaeological evidence speaks clearly. Obsidian, a volcanic glass prized for its sharpness, has been found in Japanese sites dating more than 30,000 years ago. The sources of this stone are located on small islands, such as Kozushima, far from the mainland. The presence of obsidian in camps and caves proves that humans managed to travel across open water to obtain it. This movement is not isolated. The repetition of these artifacts across time suggests that the crossings were not rare accidents, but deliberate journeys, repeated and remembered. The vessels they used remain unknown. No trace of wood or rope survives from such deep antiquity. But by comparison with other regions of the world, possibilities emerge. People may have lashed bamboo poles together to form rafts, buoyant and light. They may have hollowed logs by fire, creating dugout canoes large enough for several passengers. Even bundles of reeds, tied and sealed, can float across narrow channels. None of these require metal, only stone tools, fire, and persistence. Each is within the reach of hunter-gatherers 30,000 years ago. Crossing the water also required timing. The straits between Korea and Kyushu, and between Sakhalin and Hokkaido, carry strong tides. To launch at the wrong moment meant being swept far from land, perhaps into the open Pacific. To choose dawn, when winds are low and the far shore is visible, increased the chance of success. Knowledge of currents, winds, and seasons must have developed through observation. Watching the sea, noting when tides rose and fell, when storms passed, when birds flew low across the water, all of these observations would guide the decision to set out. The danger was immense. Salt spray stung the eyes, muscles ached from paddling. A sudden squall could capsize a raft. Cold water sapped strength quickly. Even narrow straits could prove fatal to the unprepared. Yet humans crossed them, carrying not only themselves but their tools, their fire, and their hopes of survival. They reached new shores, built new camps, and hunted in new forests. The evidence is preserved in the stone flakes they left behind, in the charcoal of their fires, and in the bones of animals they hunted and consumed. A lesser-known detail is how far these seaborne stones traveled. Obsidian from specific island sources has been discovered not only in nearby settlements, but hundreds of kilometers away. Such finds reveal that the crossings were not one-way. People journeyed back and forth, carrying materials across the straits. This circulation created networks of movement, linking island and mainland into a wider world. Even at this early date, the sea was not simply a barrier but a pathway, carrying goods and ideas as well as people. The mystery of the first attempt remains. Did a storm drive a raft off course, casting survivors onto the beaches of Kyushu? Did a group deliberately aim for the distant mountains they had glimpsed for generations? Archaeologists cannot answer. Some argue that chance played a role in the beginning, with survival leading to settlement. Others emphasize planning, pointing to the repeated transport of obsidian as evidence of knowledge. Perhaps both are true. Accidental discovery, followed by intentional return. The silence of prehistory leaves only questions. On a planetary scale, these crossings are part of a greater pattern. In Southeast Asia, people had already moved through the islands of Wallacea, reaching Australia by at least 45,000 years ago. Those voyages required passage across channels much wider than those in East Asia. If humans could cross the seas to Sahul, they could certainly cross the narrower straits to Japan. The Japanese crossings, though smaller in scale, represent the same human impulse to move beyond the visible horizon, to risk the uncertain sea in search of land. Each successful voyage transformed knowledge. To paddle across water is to change one's sense of the world. Land no longer ends at the shoreline. Beyond the waves lies more land, more forest, more stone. Each generation that makes the crossing carries new lessons: how to bind logs tighter, how to balance weight on the raft, how to paddle in rhythm, how to read the color of the sea to know the current. These lessons pass from parent to child, embedding seafaring into the memory of the people. When humans finally step onto Japanese soil, their journey is not complete. They must adapt to new landscapes: dense forests in Kyushu, cold grasslands in Hokkaido, volcanic ridges in Honshu. Yet their presence there proves the success of the sea crossing. They have transformed an obstacle into a pathway, a barrier into a bridge. The waters that once divided become the means of connection, linking island and mainland in cycles of travel, exchange, and survival. Thus, the first water crossings stand as one of humanity's quiet revolutions. They do not involve conquest, nor monuments, nor written record. They involve simple vessels, strong arms, and the courage to push away from shore. They mark the moment when humans in East Asia recognized that the sea could be crossed, and that new lands awaited those willing to risk the journey. From these beginnings, the story of Japan's earliest settlers unfolds, carried forward on waves that have never ceased to move. The first human footprints on Japanese soil are laid more than 30,000 years ago. After braving straits of restless water, people arrive on beaches of black volcanic sand, backed by dense forest. Behind them lies the continent, its plains and rivers stretching westward. Before them rises a land of mountains, rivers, and volcanoes, a place both familiar and strange. In this moment, the Japanese islands cease to be distant silhouettes across the horizon. They become lived spaces, landscapes to be explored, inhabited, and remembered. Kyushu is likely the first island reached. Its southern location, closest to the Korean peninsula, offers a natural point of entry. Here, the coastline is rugged, cut by bays and river mouths. Volcanic peaks dominate the horizon, their flanks covered in mixed forest. Rivers rush down from slopes, carrying fish and fresh water. For newcomers, the island offers abundance. Deer and wild boar roam the valleys. Nuts and fruits grow in forest clearings. Shellfish line tidal flats, easily gathered by hand. Survival is possible, but it demands learning the cycles of this new land. Archaeological traces support this arrival. In Kyushu, caves such as Fukui reveal stone tools dating to this time. Blades of obsidian, shaped with precision, lie scattered among ash and bone. These sites tell of people who not only passed through, but stayed. They made fire, prepared meals, and crafted tools. In their presence, Japan becomes more than an island glimpsed. It becomes a homeland, step by step, generation by generation. Humans adapt to its terrain. The forests here differ from those of the mainland. While northern Japan holds open grasslands during the cold glacial maximum, Kyushu shelters temperate woodland. Oak and chestnut grow, their nuts harvested in autumn. Rivers cut deep valleys, offering salmon and trout. Wetlands provide reeds and waterfowl. Each environment demands knowledge. When nuts ripen, when fish return, when animals follow their paths. Slowly, patterns are learned, shared, and remembered. To settle is to adapt memory to new rhythms. Hunting shapes much of life. Deer are a prime resource, providing meat, hides, and bone. Wild boar, too, are common, quick and fierce in the forest. Hunters use spears tipped with stone blades, flung or thrust in coordinated effort. The remains of such hunts are found in bone fragments, scorched by fire, left deep in cave layers. These bones are mute, yet they tell of shared meals, of survival carved from the forest. Hunting is not random pursuit, but knowledge of tracks, habits, and seasons. Yet survival is not only about food. Shelter is vital in a land shaped by climate extremes. Caves provide protection from wind and rain, their walls darkened by soot. Temporary huts may have been built from branches and hides, though these leave little trace after thousands of years. Hearths mark where families gathered, their glow holding back winter chill. Around these fires, tools were repaired, stories perhaps told, though none survive. What remains are stones, flakes, cores, blades that reveal skill and persistence. One lesser-known detail is the variety of stone sources across Japan. Obsidian flows are scattered through volcanic regions, such as those in central Honshu. To reach them, early humans had to travel inland, away from coasts, deep into mountain terrain. The discovery of obsidian tools far from their source shows that people explored widely. They crossed valleys, climbed ridges, and carried stone back to their camps. The arrival on new shores was not a single step, but the beginning of constant movement across islands. Mysteries surround these early settlements. How many people first arrived? Was it a single small band, or several groups arriving over centuries? Did they remain isolated in Kyushu, or spread quickly into Honshu and Hokkaido? Archaeological evidence is fragmentary, scattered across caves and open sites. The picture remains incomplete. Some scholars suggest multiple waves of migration, perhaps from different routes, north, south, and west. Others argue for a small founder group, slowly expanding. The truth may never be fully known, hidden beneath layers of soil and time. On the planetary scale, the arrival in Japan mirrors human expansion elsewhere. At the same time, groups are entering the Americas through Beringia, exploring lands no human has yet seen. In Europe, people push into cold valleys where glaciers retreat. In Africa, Communities adapt to shifting deserts and grasslands. Everywhere, humans encounter new environments, each demanding adaptation. The settlement of Japan is one chapter in this global story, a story of resilience, of mobility, of learning to live in unfamiliar worlds. For those first to step ashore, Japan offers both challenge and promise. Its forests are thick, its mountains steep, its rivers swift, yet it also offers game, water, and stone. Over time, these resources shape lifeways unique to the islands. Camps cluster near caves, rivers, and coasts. Obsidian becomes the favored material for blades. Shellfish supplement diet, their discarded shells forming middens that will endure for millennia. Slowly, an island identity emerges, though it remains deeply tied to the wider world across the seas. The first water crossings, dangerous and uncertain, now give way to life on land. Human presence spreads, leaving marks in stone and fire. Japan is no longer distant. It is inhabited, and with each step taken into its forests and valleys, the bond between people and island deepens. These early settlers, though long vanished, begin a story that will unfold for tens of thousands of years, shaped by volcano, sea, and sky. When humans first begin to explore and inhabit the Japanese islands, they encounter a land of striking diversity. The Ice Age shapes every valley, every ridge, and every forest. Glaciers in the far north send winds southward, chilling the air. Sea levels remain low, exposing wide coastal plains. Within this landscape, animals move in abundance, and the hunt becomes central to survival. For the early settlers, Japan is both a land of plenty and a place of constant adaptation. In the forests of Kyushu and Honshu, deer wander in herds. These animals, swift and watchful, provide meat, hide, bone, and sinew. They become a cornerstone of life, pursued across ridges and trapped in valleys. Wild boar, smaller but fierce, also roam the woodlands. Their tusks and bristles mark them as dangerous prey, yet their flesh is rich and sustaining. Bears inhabit the higher slopes, formidable but valuable for their fat and fur. For those who settle here, knowledge of animal movement is as essential as stone blades or fire. To the north, in Hokkaido and Sakhalin, the land is colder, closer to the great mammoth steppe of Siberia. Here, enormous creatures once graze. Woolly mammoths, with curved tusks and shaggy coats, leave tracks across grasslands. Giant elk, their antlers stretching wider than the span of a man's arms, feed on open plains. These animals are rare, but their presence shows that Japan is part of the wider Pleistocene world. Fossil bones and stone tools found together in northern sites suggest that humans did at times confront such giants, though perhaps more by scavenging than direct pursuit. Archaeology gives glimpses of these hunts. In caves, layers of soil preserve scorched bones, cracked open to reach the marrow. Deer antlers lie near hearths, sometimes bearing cut marks. Charcoal flecks mingle with fragments of boar skull. Each piece, silent and small, builds a picture of daily life. Families gather around fire, sharing the results of a hunt. Stone flakes nearby show tools sharpened after use, preparing for the next day. Though no stories survive, the remains of animals tell of persistence, skill, and necessity. The tools themselves are remarkable. By 30,000 years ago, people in Japan craft long, slender blades, chipped with precision. These blades fit into wooden shafts, forming spears or knives. Some are small and sharp, used for scraping hides. Others are broad, capable of cutting flesh from bone. The skill of flaking obsidian into fine points is evident across many sites. Obsidian's sharpness makes it ideal for piercing hides and slicing meat. Yet its brittleness requires constant resharpening. Archaeological layers show countless flakes, each one the byproduct of maintenance, each one a trace of survival. Hunting requires strategy. Deer are swift, capable of fleeing into dense cover. Boar turn and charge, dangerous to careless hunters. Coordinated effort is essential. Some hunters may have driven animals toward others, waiting in ambush. Others may have set traps of sharpened stakes or guided prey into narrow valleys. Such techniques leave little archaeological trace, yet ethnographic parallels suggest they were possible. Success depends not only on strength, but on knowledge of terrain, animal habits, and seasonal movement. One lesser-known detail is the significance of salmon runs in northern rivers. In Hokkaido and northern Honshu, salmon migrate upstream in autumn, providing vast quantities of food. Archaeological evidence of fish bones in ancient hearths shows that people made use of this resource. The timing of the runs creates a seasonal rhythm. In late summer and autumn, families gather near rivers, catching fish by hand, spear, or net. The surplus may have been smoked or dried for later use. For Ice Age peoples, salmon runs could mean the difference between scarcity and abundance. The hunt, however, is shaped by climate. As global ice sheets advance and retreat, Japan's ecosystems shift. In colder phases, grasslands spread, supporting larger game. In warmer intervals, forests reclaim valleys, favoring deer and boar. Each shift forces adaptation. Hunters learn new strategies, craft new tools, and adjust their movement. Archaeological records show these transitions in the changing balance of animal remains. Layers heavy with large grazers give way to layers dominated by forest animals. The hunt is never static. It changes as the land itself changes. Mysteries persist. Did early settlers of Japan hunt mammoths directly? Or did they scavenge the carcasses of animals that died naturally? Were giant elk a staple of diet, or rare prizes? Archaeologists debate these points, noting that the scarcity of such bones may reflect either rarity in the environment or caution in human strategy. What is certain is that smaller game, deer, boar, birds, and fish, formed the backbone of survival. The great beasts, though impressive, were never reliable. It was the steady cycle of local animals that sustained daily life. On the planetary scale, these hunting patterns echo those across Ice Age Eurasia. In Europe, people pursue reindeer and horses across tundra. In Siberia, mammoth hunters follow herds across vast plains. In the Americas, early groups confront bison and camel. Everywhere, survival depends on close knowledge of animals and the changing world they inhabit. Japan is no different. Its forests and rivers provide a unique set of challenges, but the rhythm of hunt and season fits the wider human story. For those who stepped onto Japan's shores, the hunt becomes more than survival. It shapes movement, social bonds, and memory. Each animal pursued carries lessons: where it runs, when it rests, how it flees. These lessons pass between generations, embedding the land into human knowledge. Step by step, the people of Japan learn to live with deer in the valleys, boar in the forests, salmon in the rivers. Their tools, their camps, their very presence are bound to the animals they depend upon. The land is changing, the climate is shifting, but the hunt continues, carrying life forward in a new island world. The record of early human life in Japan is preserved not in words, but in stone. across Kyushu, Honshu, and Hokkaido, scattered in caves and open sites. Archaeologists uncover fragments of blades, flakes, and cores. Each one is small, sharp-edged, and mute. Yet together, they tell the story of technology and adaptation during the Ice Age. They are the sparks of human ingenuity, reminders of the constant labor needed to survive in forests, plains, and rivers. By 30,000 years ago, the toolkits of humans in Japan show remarkable refinement. The blades are long, narrow, and carefully flaked on both sides. Archaeologists call them knife-shaped tools, predecessors to the microblades that appear later in the Upper Paleolithic. These blades fit into wooden shafts, bound with fiber, transforming stone into spear or knife. With them, hunters pierce the hide of deer, slice meat from bone, and scrape fat for fire. Without such tools, survival in a cold and shifting land would be far more difficult. The choice of material reveals much. Obsidian, volcanic glass formed in eruptions, is especially prized. It fractures cleanly, producing edges sharper than metal. Sources of obsidian are scattered across the Japanese islands, concentrated in regions like Kozushima, Hoshikuso, and Nagano. To obtain it, people must travel, sometimes far into mountainous terrain or across the sea. The presence of obsidian in sites far from its origin demonstrates both mobility and exchange. It is not only stone, it is evidence of movement, of connection across landscapes and waters. Other stones are also used: andesite, chert, and sandstone, each with properties suited to specific tasks. Larger, tougher rocks become hammerstones, used to strike flakes from cores. Finer-grained material yields blades or scrapers. The process of knapping leaves behind fields of flakes, tiny fragments that today form the core of archaeological discovery. Each flake is a record of a blow struck by human hand, of intention carried out in stone. Fire, too, is ever present. In caves across Japan, layers of soil are blackened with charcoal, dotted with ash, and marked by reddened earth. These are hearths, circles of fire where families gathered. Around them, tools were repaired, food cooked, hides softened, and warmth sustained against the cold winds of glacial nights. Sparks flew as stones struck together, or as embers from one fire lit another. Fire was carried carefully, preserved in smoldering bundles of bark or grass, moved from camp to camp. Without fire, the Ice Age climate would have been unendurable. One lesser-known detail is the combination of stone and fire in daily tasks. Heat was sometimes used to improve the quality of stone. Experiments by archaeologists suggest that controlled heating can make obsidian or chert easier to flake, producing sharper and more predictable edges. While direct evidence for heat treatment in Paleolithic Japan is debated, some patterns in artifacts suggest this knowledge may have existed. If so, the mastery of both spark and stone was even deeper than fragments alone reveal. Mysteries remain. Did groups in Japan develop their tool traditions independently? Or were they influenced by movements from the mainland? Some artifacts resemble those found in Korea and northern China. Others show unique traits, suggesting local innovation. The exact pathways of knowledge are unclear, buried in time. What is certain is that by 30,000 years ago, tool-making in Japan stood at a high level of sophistication, suited to the demands of island environments. The planetary context underscores the significance. Across the world, humans refined stone tool traditions in this era. In Europe, blade industries spread. In Siberia, Microblade cores emerge. In Africa, complex points and backed tools appear. Everywhere, sparks fly from stone, evidence of shared ingenuity across continents. Japan, though isolated by seas, is part of this larger story. The tools found in its caves belong to the same broad chapter of human adaptation to cold climates and challenging landscapes. The rhythm of life revolves around these objects. Each hunt requires sharp blades. Each hide scraped for clothing needs durable edges. Each fire maintained demands fuel cut by stone. The making of tools is not a rare event, but a constant task. Flakes are struck daily, points reshaped, scrapers retouched. Around every hearth, a scatter of chips gathers, silent testimony to persistence. Archaeologists uncover them in layers, thousands of years later, piecing together the slow accumulation of labor. To imagine life in those camps is to picture sparks flashing in darkness. A hunter sits, stone core in hand, striking flakes with care. Beside him, fire glows, casting shadows on cave walls. Children watch, learning the skill that ensures survival. Outside, the forest lies cold, the animals restless in their paths. Inside, sparks and stones carry the promise of another day endured. These images, though reconstructed from fragments, remind us that technology is not abstract. It is lived, repeated, and shared. The stone tools of Japan's first settlers endure long after bones decay and fires die. They are the most durable trace of presence, scattered across islands that were once wild and unfamiliar. Each fragment is both artifact and echo. It tells of hands that struck, eyes that judged, and minds that understood how to shape nature into aid. In their silence, they speak of resilience. As the centuries pass, stones and sparks remain at the center of life. The hunt continues, the fires burn, the tools are shaped anew. This unbroken cycle carries humans forward through Ice Age winters and shifting climates. When archaeologists uncover these fragments today, they uncover not only technology, but the very heartbeat of survival on Japan's early shores. Along the ancient coastlines of Ice Age Japan, humans live in close rhythm with the sea. The tides retreat, leaving stretches of sand and mudflats glistening under the pale light of the sun. Here, shellfish lie in abundance, oysters clinging to rock, clams buried just beneath the surface, mussels and scallops revealed in shallow pools. For hunter-gatherers who must balance risk and reward, these resources provide dependable sustenance. They require no chase, no dangerous pursuit of tusked boar or swift deer. They can be collected with patience, roasted over fire, and consumed in quiet gatherings along the shore. Over time, the remnants of these meals, hard shells resistant to decay, pile up in middens, slowly sinking into soil. Centuries pass, millennia accumulate, and what was once daily refuse becomes one of the most enduring traces of early human life in Japan. Archaeologists, uncovering these shell middens, find more than evidence of diet. They find proof of presence, signs of repeated return to the same favored locations. In Kyushu and Honshu, small deposits of shells appear alongside stone flakes and charcoal. Though the great shell mounds of the later Jomon culture belong to a much younger era, the origins of shell gathering reach back into the Paleolithic. Even in the depths of the Ice Age, the sea nourished communities, providing steady food when hunts failed and forests grew sparse. The shells beneath the earth record these quiet choices of survival. The practice of shellfish gathering influences seasonal movement. During warmer months, when tides are lowest and beds are most accessible, Families establish camps near estuaries and sheltered bays. They gather shellfish in woven baskets, carry them back to camp, and cook them in hearths whose stones glow with embers. At night, the refuse is discarded nearby, forming heaps that grow with each return. In autumn, groups may shift inland to pursue deer and gather nuts, leaving the coast behind. Yet they return, year after year, when the tides again reveal their harvest. Shells mark this rhythm of departure and return, tying humans to the pulse of the sea. Some shells carry marks beyond consumption. Archaeologists find specimens pierced with holes, edges worn smooth by string. These are not food waste, but ornaments, beads or pendants that once adorned bodies. Their presence reveals symbolic behavior, a recognition that objects can hold meaning beyond their immediate use. Shells travel far inland, found in sites dozens of kilometers from the nearest coast. Such finds suggest that people valued them as tokens of identity, memory, or exchange. A small oyster shell, carried from shore to mountain, embodies both mobility and symbolism. The shells beneath the earth whisper of spirit as well as sustenance. Stone tools often lie in close company with these shells. Flakes of obsidian, andesite, and chert rest in the same layers as shell fragments. Hunters arriving at the coast shape blades to cut through ligament and muscle, using sharp edges to pry oysters from rock or open clam shells. Fire completes the process, its heat loosening shells and releasing edible flesh. The combination of stone, fire, and shell speaks of integrated lifeways. Humans adapt every element of their surroundings: forest for wood, mountain for stone, tide for food. Archaeological layers, where shells mingle with charcoal and stone flakes, capture this web of adaptation. One lesser-known detail is the role of shells in recording climate. Calcium carbonate preserves the isotopic balance of seawater at the time of formation. Modern scientists measure oxygen isotopes in ancient shells to reconstruct sea temperatures and salinity from 30,000 years ago. These data reveal that the seas around Japan were colder during the glacial maximum, and currents differed from those of today. Thus, the humble shell doubles as both meal and climate archive. It preserves not only the story of human consumption, but also the broader rhythms of Earth itself. The question of meaning remains open. Were early shell middens simple heaps of waste, or were they intentionally arranged? Some deposits appear layered, structured with ash and stone, as if carefully maintained. Others are scattered, casual traces of daily life. Archaeologists debate whether shells held ritual significance. Did people treat them as offerings to the sea that sustained them? Were shell ornaments marks of status or memory? The evidence is fragmentary, yet the persistence of shells in symbolic contexts suggests that they were more than refuse. Beneath the earth, they conceal mysteries alongside certainties. Comparisons with other regions highlight the significance of these finds. In Africa, pierced shells appear among the earliest evidence of symbolic behavior, dating back more than 70,000 years. In Europe, coastal caves preserve heaps of mollusks eaten by Ice Age hunters. In Australia, ancient shell middens stretch along shores that have been inhabited for tens of millennia. Everywhere, humans turn to the sea, shaping diets and identities through its resources. Japan belongs to this global pattern, its coastlines echoing practices found across continents. Shellfish gathering is one of humanity's oldest, most universal traditions. For the people of Ice Age Japan, the coast was more than a boundary. It was a source of food, a place of gathering, a site of memory. Shell middens testify that people lingered here, sharing meals, crafting ornaments, shaping tools, and watching tides shift. They show that survival depended not only on bold hunts or dangerous sea crossings, but also on the quiet patience of hands searching in sand. Each shell unearthed today is a fragment of such a moment: a child learning to gather, a hunter resting from the chase, a family roasting clams by the fire. The durability of shells makes them exceptional witnesses. Bone decays, wood vanishes, and fibers dissolve, but shells endure. Their hardness resists time, allowing archaeologists to uncover them tens of thousands of years later. In this way, shells beneath the earth preserve what other traces cannot. They carry forward the memory of ordinary acts, embedding them into soil and sediment. When exposed again, they remind us that survival is not only heroic, but habitual. It is carried in the small, repeated acts of gathering, cooking, discarding, acts that build culture as surely as great hunts or bold journeys. Thus, the shells beneath the earth hold dual meaning. They are food remains, practical and necessary. They are also symbols, ornaments, and archives. They speak of human ingenuity, patience, and connection to the sea. They bridge the gap between body and spirit, between sustenance and symbolism. For the first islanders of Japan, shells shaped daily life. For us, they shape knowledge of a world otherwise lost. Each fragment unearthed is a spark of continuity, carrying the voices of a time when humans first found their place along Japan's ancient shores. When humans first settled the Japanese islands, their story does not end at the shoreline. Though separated from the continent by narrow but treacherous straits, they continue to move, to connect, and to exchange. The sea, once an obstacle, becomes a thread. Across it, stone, ideas, and memory flow back and forth. Archaeologists trace these movements in the sharp glint of obsidian, a volcanic glass prized for its perfect edges. The presence of obsidian from distant sources, carried across water and land, proves that early humans built networks across water. Networks that reveal the scope of their mobility, their persistence, and their capacity to weave scattered groups into a larger whole. Obsidian is central to this story. In Japan, rich deposits lie in volcanic zones such as Kozushima, Nagano, and Hokkaido. To reach some of these, humans must cross rivers, climb ridges, or sail across open water. The artifacts found in sites far from these sources, blades, flakes, and tiny shards, show that people valued the stone enough to transport it long distances. Some pieces traveled over 100 kilometers from their origin. Others appear at coastal sites where no volcanic stone is native. The pattern is unmistakable. Obsidian moved, and with it, connections grew. The movement of obsidian suggests deliberate routes. Groups living in Kyushu might travel inland to obtain local stone, while others in Honshu crossed rivers to volcanic outcrops. Still others launched simple rafts to reach Kozushima, an island more than 30 kilometers offshore. Archaeologists find Kozushima obsidian in sites that prove repeated journeys, not chance landings. The stone's appearance in layers separated by centuries demonstrates that knowledge of its location was preserved and shared. People remembered where the best stone lay, and they passed that memory across generations. But obsidian is not the only material that traveled. Shell ornaments, as seen in earlier sections, appear far inland, suggesting exchange between coastal and inland groups. River valleys served as corridors, guiding people and goods deep into mountainous terrain. Hunting grounds overlapped, and encounters between bands created opportunities for trade. Stone from one source might be exchanged for meat, hides, or crafted tools from another. Though no direct evidence of barter survives, the spread of materials implies such interactions. Networks across water were also networks across land, linking coast, forest, and mountain. Firelight in caves reveals more clues. In many sites, archaeologists find hearths filled with charcoal from diverse woods, carried from different habitats. Some caves contain bones of animals not native to the immediate area, hinting at hunting trips or exchanged meat. Even pigments, rare in Japan's Paleolithic record, sometimes appear, possibly carried as fragments of ochre from distant places. Each of these traces, like the spread of obsidian, points to movement beyond a single valley or island. Humans of Ice Age Japan were not isolated. They were part of a wider fabric of connection. One lesser-known detail is the discovery of obsidian in mainland sites that matches Japanese sources. This suggests not only movement into Japan, but also outward journeys. People may have crossed the straits both ways, carrying stone to the continent as well as into the islands. Such a pattern implies knowledge of return voyages, intentional crossings back and forth. The sea, rather than a one-way passage, becomes a medium of continuity. In this light, Japan is not an isolated corner, but an active node in the larger East Asian network of movement and exchange. Mysteries remain. How exactly were these networks organized? Were they based on kinship, with related groups visiting one another across seasons? Were they based on gatherings, where multiple bands met at rich hunting grounds or along river valleys? Or were they more sporadic, occasional encounters sparked by chance? Archaeology cannot answer with certainty, yet the persistence of stone and shell in places far from their sources implies more than accident. It suggests patterns, however fragile, of social connection. These patterns carried not only goods, but also stories, techniques, and shared knowledge of the land and sea. The planetary context gives these networks even greater meaning. Around the same era, humans in Europe exchanged flint and shells across hundreds of kilometers. In Siberia, obsidian from volcanic Kamchatka spreads far inland. In Australia, ochre and shell beads move along coastlines linking distant communities. Everywhere, hunter-gatherers build webs of exchange, fragile yet enduring, that hold groups together across vast landscapes. The networks of Japan are part of this universal pattern, humans using mobility, memory, and trust to bind themselves into something larger than the immediate family or band. The technology of these exchanges is simple yet profound. A raft of logs, pushed into the straits, can carry a group to an offshore island. A basket woven of reeds can hold shells or obsidian for transport. A bundle of meat or hide can be shared at a meeting place, sealing bonds between groups. Nothing is monumental. Nothing leaves architecture or writing. Yet in these small acts lies the architecture of connection. Each exchange strengthens the possibility of survival, weaving resilience into the fabric of human life. Archaeologists studying these patterns note the importance of memory. To find an obsidian outcrop requires knowledge of terrain, passed from generation to generation. To reach an island requires memory of horizon lines, of currents, of the right season to cross. To know where other groups can be found requires stories carried in words and gestures. Networks across water are therefore also networks of memory. They preserve and transmit knowledge, binding not only space, but also time. In daily life, these networks may have felt ordinary. A family traveling along a river meets another band and shares food. A hunter returns with stone from a volcanic ridge. A group crosses to an island to collect obsidian, then returns with blades that cut more cleanly than local rock. Yet, over centuries, the accumulation of such acts creates vast webs, invisible yet powerful. The shells and stones beneath the earth today are the faint traces of this constant weaving. They remind us that even in isolation, humans rarely stand alone. Thus, the story of early Japan is not simply one of arrival, it is also one of connection. The islands were not cut off, sealed by water. They were linked by movement, by stone and shell, by the memory of roots across sea and mountain. The networks across water demonstrate the resilience of humans in the Ice Age, their capacity to turn barriers into pathways, and their determination to remain part of a larger world. In the deep valleys and volcanic ridges of Ice Age Japan, caves open like dark mouths in the rock. Some are shallow shelters, wide enough only for a temporary rest. Others run deep into limestone, forming chambers that echo with dripping water. For the first settlers of the islands, these caves become sanctuaries. They provide shelter from wind and snow, protection from rain, and a place to build fire. Within their walls, traces remain, blackened soil, flecks of charcoal, and bones cracked for marrow. These are the signs of firelight in the caves, faint yet enduring, the quiet record of human life 30,000 years ago. Archaeologists uncover these traces at sites such as Fukui Cave in Kyushu and Kanadori in Honshu. In layers dated to the Upper Paleolithic, they find hearths filled with ash, surrounded by stone flakes and animal bone. The evidence shows repeated use, not just a single visit. Families returned season after season, year after year, carrying fire into the dark. The caves became places of continuity, remembered across generations. In their soot-stained walls, archaeologists read the endurance of life at the edge of an ice-bound world. The role of fire in these caves cannot be overstated. Flames brought warmth in cold winters, when glacial winds swept down from the north. They provided light in darkness, turning caves into habitable spaces. They offered safety, deterring predators that prowled the forests outside. Around the hearth, people gathered to cook meat, roast shellfish, and dry skins. Sparks rose and flickered against stone, casting shifting patterns of shadow. Though the voices that spoke here are gone, the firelight itself lingers in the traces left behind. The food prepared in these caves reflects the diversity of Japan's environments. Deer bones, scorched and split, suggest roasting and marrow extraction. Boar remains show cut marks from stone blades. Salmon bones reveal that fish from rivers were cooked alongside game. Shell fragments indicate that meals from the sea also reached these hearths. Each fire becomes a meeting point of environments, forest, river, and coast, combined in shared sustenance. Archaeologists piecing together these fragments see not only survival, but a pattern of life tied to varied landscapes. The tools made and repaired by firelight reveal skill and persistence. Stone cores lie near hearths, struck again and again to produce sharp blades. Obsidian flakes scatter across soil, discarded after reshaping. Scrapers used to clean hides are retouched in the glow of embers. Wooden shafts hardened in the heat of the fire become spears for the next hunt. The cave is not merely a shelter, but a workshop, illuminated by flame. The sparks of stone striking stone mix with the sparks of fire itself, binding human ingenuity with the rhythm of the hearth. One lesser-known detail is the evidence of layered hearths, fires built repeatedly in the same spot, one atop another. At some sites, archaeologists find stacked deposits of ash, each marking a separate episode of occupation. These layers form a vertical timeline, recording visits across centuries. The choice to rebuild fire in the same place shows continuity of memory. People returned, recognized the cave, and reignited flame where their ancestors had once sat. Firelight thus becomes both practical and symbolic, a bridge between past and present. Mysteries remain within these caves. Were they only shelters of necessity, or did they also carry meaning beyond survival? In some parts of the world, caves preserve paintings and carvings, evidence of symbolic life. In Japan, Ice Age cave art has not been found, though pigments and worked stone suggest awareness of symbolic practice. Did the firelit walls once hold stories spoken in darkness? Did shadows dancing on stone spark imagination? The absence of direct evidence leaves these questions unanswered, yet the possibility remains that caves were more than shelters. They may have been places of memory and meaning. The planetary scale adds depth to this picture. In Europe, caves at sites like Chauvet and Lascaux hold both hearths and art, blending survival with expression. In Siberia, caves preserve bones and charcoal, marks of humans enduring long winters. In Africa, rock shelters contain hearths layered across thousands of years. Everywhere, caves serve as anchors in shifting landscapes, places where humans could pause, regroup, and endure. Japan's caves fit into this universal pattern. Firelit sanctuaries, humble yet vital, carrying human life through the extremes of climate. The rhythm of cave life follows the seasons. In winter, caves provide refuge from cold winds. In spring, families may move to riversides for salmon runs. In summer, coasts draw them to shellfish beds. In autumn, they return inland for nuts and deer. Yet again and again, caves remain central in the cycle. They are the places to which people return, the places where embers are rekindled, the places where continuity is preserved. Firelight anchors the rhythm of movement, giving shape to the annual round of survival. For the people of Ice Age Japan, caves also represent connection to the landscape. Each cave is known, remembered, and revisited. Its entrance is a landmark, its interior a map of warmth and shadow. The hearth within becomes part of human geography, as significant as rivers or hunting grounds. When archaeologists uncover charcoal deep in cave soil, they uncover not only a technical trace, but a memory of belonging. These caves are not random shelters. They are homes of the season, tied to identity and place. The endurance of firelight in caves is remarkable. Charcoal fragments, no larger than a fingernail, survive for tens of thousands of years. Ash layers, fragile yet distinct, reveal where flames once burned. Soot clings to stone ceilings, a black film left by smoke. These traces, faint yet indelible, carry forward the story of human survival. They remind us that even in the harshest times, people found warmth, light, and community in the glow of fire. Thus, Section 11 closes on the image of a cave, firelight flickering on walls, smoke drifting upward, and tools scattered on the floor. Outside, the Ice Age night presses with cold and silence. Inside, humans endure, bound together by flame. The caves of Japan, humble shelters of stone, preserve this story. They hold the memory of sparks that once lit darkness, of warmth that once defied winter, of lives lived in the shelter of rock. The firelight in the caves endures, a quiet testimony to resilience at the edge of an ancient sea. 30,000 years ago, the people of Japan live in a world that shifts beneath their feet. The Ice Age is not static. It breathes, advances, and retreats. Glaciers spread across continents, then shrink, releasing meltwater back into the seas. Forests advance into valleys, then withdraw when the cold deepens again. For humans in Japan, these cycles are not abstract forces. They are voices of climate, shaping every hunt, every journey, every return to camp. The land, the animals, and the sea all respond to these immense rhythms, and people must learn to listen. The lowered sea level is the most visible effect. When ice thickens in the far north, oceans retreat, exposing wide shelves. Around Japan, coastlines extend far outward. Plains now stretch where deep bays will one day lie. Estuaries wander farther from mountains, their mouths opening onto flat expanses of mud and sand. For hunter-gatherers, these plains provide rich grounds for shellfish, fish, and birds. Yet the seas never fully recede. Narrow straits remain, carrying powerful currents. Japan is always an island, connected only by the fragile memory of crossings. Forests, too, shift with the climate. In colder phases, much of northern Honshu and Hokkaido turns to open grassland, with scattered stands of larch and pine. Great herds of grazing animals move across these plains: deer, elk, and, in rare moments, mammoth. In warmer intervals, temperate woodland returns, oak, chestnut, and beech spread their canopies, dropping nuts in abundance each autumn. For humans, this means constant adjustment. The tools that work in open grassland must give way to those suited for dense forest. Hunts that once relied on tracking herds now focus on ambush within thickets. Knowledge must adapt as swiftly as the land itself. Rivers change course under the weight of these shifts. When glaciers melt, their waters swell channels, flooding valleys and cutting new paths. When ice advances, rainfall decreases and streams dwindle. Along these rivers, humans build their camps, gather fish, and use fresh water for survival. But they can never rely on permanence. A river that runs strong one generation may shrink or move the next. The voices of climate reshape even the most essential lifelines, reminding people that no part of their environment is fixed. One lesser-known detail lies in pollen preserved in lake sediments. Modern scientists extract cores of mud from ancient lake beds in Japan, reading layer upon layer of microscopic grains. Each grain tells which plants grew in a given era. These records reveal the pulse of climate with astonishing clarity. They show when forests spread, when grasslands dominated, and when cold returned. In the soil of lakes like Suigetsu, the voices of climate are inscribed. They speak across 30 millennia, confirming what human survival already suggests. The land changed, again and again. The presence of obsidian in sites also hints at mobility, shaped by climate. When forests advanced, people traveled farther to reach open plains. When grasslands spread, herds drew them northward, closer to volcanic sources of stone. Climate dictated not only what was eaten, but also where people moved, how far they journeyed, and which resources they valued. The networks described earlier bend and stretch in response to these shifts. Exchange, travel, and seafaring are not constant. They ebb and flow with climate's demands. Mysteries endure in this record. Did people retreat southward during the coldest phases, abandoning northern Japan to the ice? Or did small groups persist even in Hokkaido, adapting to tundra landscapes? Archaeological evidence is sparse in some regions, rich in others, leaving gaps that fuel debate. Some scholars propose waves of abandonment and recolonization, tied to climate swings. Others suggest continuous presence, with numbers rising and falling. The voices of climate speak clearly in geology, but less so in human traces. Much remains hidden beneath soil and sea. On the planetary scale, Japan's climate shifts mirror those elsewhere. In Europe, ice sheets spread across Scandinavia, forcing people into refuges farther south. In Siberia, the mammoth steppe expands and contracts. In Africa, the Sahara turns green in wet phases, then dry and barren in glacial peaks. Everywhere, humans adapt to these great oscillations. Their survival proves flexibility, ingenuity, and resilience. Japan's settlers, though separated by seas, belong to this global story. The voices of climate that shape their forests are the same voices that carve deserts and flood plains on other continents. The impact of climate reaches beyond environment. It shapes memory and tradition. Families learn that rivers shift, forests vanish, and coasts change. They pass on stories of abundance and scarcity, of good years and hard ones. Such memory becomes survival knowledge. Even without writing, lessons echo: where to find salmon when waters run high, where to dig roots when forests retreat, when to leave valleys before floods return. These voices, remembered through generations, give humans the ability to persist in unstable worlds. In caves, hearth layers reflect these changes. Thick deposits of ash in some periods suggest longer stays, when food was abundant nearby. Thin, scattered traces in others suggest fleeting visits, when groups moved often in search of game. Charred plant remains hint at forests shifting in composition. Bones tell whether hunters pursued forest deer or grassland elk. Archaeologists read these subtle differences as echoes of climate, preserved in daily life. Each hearth becomes a record, each bone a witness to shifting skies. The seas themselves speak through shells. As noted earlier, isotopes in shells reveal water temperature. Cold intervals leave their imprint in the chemistry of discarded clam and oyster. Warmer phases alter the ratios, marking the rhythm of glacial cycles. In this way, the simple act of gathering shellfish leaves evidence of global change. The voices of climate are preserved not only in ice cores and sediments, but in the very meals eaten by humans on Japan's ancient shores. For the people who lived through these shifts, the world must have seemed both reliable and unstable. The deer returned each year, the salmon swam upstream, the nuts fell in autumn, yet across generations, coasts vanished, forests moved, and rivers changed. To live here was to balance on the edge of change, never assuming permanence. The voices of climate were constant companions, sometimes gentle, sometimes harsh, always present. Humans listened, adapted, and endured. Thus, the settlement of Japan is not only a story of arrival or of stone tools. It is also a story of climate's voice, speaking through ice, forest, river, and sea. Those who lived here did not control it, but they learned to move with it, to shape their lives around its rhythms. The traces they left, obsidian, shells, bones, and charcoal, are fragments of that dialogue. They remind us that human survival has always depended on listening, and that the voices of climate continue to shape life on Earth, long after the Ice Age has passed. The earliest settlement of Japan carries with it questions that remain unanswered. Archaeologists uncover stone tools, bones, and shells, yet the precise story of how and when people first arrived is still debated. Every artifact offers a clue, but none provides certainty. The evidence proves that humans stood on Japanese soil more than 30,000 years ago. What it cannot fully explain is how many times they came, from which routes, or with what intentions. The mystery of the first arrival endures, echoing across centuries of research. an unsolved puzzle resting beneath layers of earth. Multiple routes into Japan are possible. To the west lies the Tsushima Strait, separating Kyushu from the Korean peninsula. Narrow though it is, it has always held strong currents. To the north lies the Soya Strait, between Hokkaido and Sakhalin, connecting to Siberia. This route is colder, but during glacial lows, the distance narrows. To the south, the Ryukyu Islands stretch like stepping stones from Taiwan, though each step requires crossing water. Archaeologists consider all three routes plausible. Each fits some evidence, yet none alone explains the full pattern. Obsidian points toward repeated crossings. The Kozushima source in central Japan lies far offshore, requiring deliberate sea voyages. Artifacts from this source appear in mainland sites, suggesting two-way movement. This implies more than a single chance landing. It suggests knowledge of sea travel and repeated journeys. Yet whether this technology developed locally or was borrowed from mainland groups remains debated. Did humans in Japan invent their own seafaring, or did they arrive already skilled? The record is silent, leaving only speculation supported by shards of glassy stone. Genetic studies add another layer, yet not full clarity. DNA from later populations suggests complex ancestry, blending influences from northern Asia and from southern routes through island chains. This hints that multiple migrations occurred, arriving at different times. Some may have come through Hokkaido, following mammoth steppe and tundra game. Others may have ventured northward from Taiwan and the Philippines, island hopping through the Ryukyus. Still others may have crossed directly from the Korean peninsula. Each possibility leaves a faint imprint in the genetic record, yet the earliest settlers themselves left no living descendants whose DNA we can sample directly. The mystery remains suspended between science and silence. Archaeological sites themselves carry contradictions. In Kyushu, stone tools more than 30,000 years old suggest early settlement from the west. In Hokkaido, different tool traditions appear, more closely linked to Siberian steppe cultures. In the southern islands, scattered remains hint at movement from the tropics. Did these represent one continuous population spreading across the islands? Or were they separate arrivals, coming at different times, perhaps never meeting? The truth may be complex, a tapestry of arrivals, some enduring, others vanishing. One lesser-known detail concerns the possibility of early abandonment. Some scholars argue that the first humans to arrive in Japan may not have survived permanently. They suggest that initial settlers, small in number, may have struggled against climate extremes and dwindling resources. Their traces remain in stone tools and shell fragments, but their lineages may have ended. Later groups, arriving from different routes, could have repopulated the islands. In this view, Japan was not settled once, but several times, by waves of humans whose stories overlapped and replaced one another. The debate over intentional versus accidental arrival adds to the mystery. Storms could sweep rafts from the continent into Japan, landing survivors on unfamiliar shores. Such accidents might explain isolated finds. Yet the repeated presence of obsidian from offshore islands argues for planning. Accidents may open the way, but persistence requires knowledge. Did the first settlers arrive by accident and then learn to return? Or were they already seafarers, navigating deliberately across currents? The question touches the very heart of human ingenuity. Whether boldness or chance first carried people to Japan? On the planetary scale, these questions echo elsewhere. In Australia, scholars still debate whether first arrivals were intentional voyages or accidental drifts. In the Americas, the precise timing and route of initial entry remain contested. In Europe, The spread of cultures across Ice Age valleys raises questions of continuity versus replacement. Everywhere, the deep past resists certainty. The mystery of the first arrival in Japan is thus part of a broader truth, that human history is not a single line, but a branching, converging web. Climate complicates the picture further. At times of glacial advance, sea levels fall, narrowing straits and easing crossings. At times of retreat, seas rise, drowning coastal plains and isolating islands. Many early sites now lie underwater, lost beneath modern bays and seas. Tokyo Bay, once a fertile plain, now hides potential evidence beneath its depths. The Seto Inland Sea, once dry valleys, is now drowned. What we recover today is only part of the record. Much of the story of the first arrival may remain inaccessible, hidden beneath waves. Mysteries endure not only in archaeology and genetics, but also in absence. No human fossils from this earliest phase have yet been found in Japan. The bones of deer, boar, and fish survive, but human remains are absent. Without them, questions of appearance, ancestry, and health remain unanswered. Were these settlers robust northern hunters, adapted to cold, or southern voyagers, used to island life? Until bones are uncovered, the people themselves remain shadows, known only by what they left behind. One can imagine the persistence required to endure. Crossing seas, adapting to forests, learning to hunt new animals, gathering new plants. These were not easy tasks. Yet people did it, leaving tools, shells, and fire behind. The mystery lies not in whether they came, but in how often, by what means, and with what fate. Every artifact is both proof and question, evidence and silence. Thus, the story of the first arrival is framed by uncertainty. Archaeologists piece together shards of obsidian, fragments of shell, layers of charcoal. Geneticists trace faint echoes of ancestry. Geologists study sediments for signs of changing coastlines. Each discipline adds a voice, but none completes the chorus. The first settlers of Japan remain partly hidden, their journey marked but not fully known. The mystery endures, reminding us that the past is not always clear, even when fragments lie in our hands. What is clear is that people came, and that their coming marked a new chapter in the story of humanity. They turned seas into pathways, forests into homes, rivers into sources of life, whether by accident or intent. Once they arrived, they endured. The precise details may remain unknown, but the larger truth is undeniable. The islands of Japan became part of the human world because of them. The mystery of their arrival is not absence. It is presence tinged with wonder, a story still unfolding beneath the soil and the sea. Life for the first humans in Japan unfolds under constant tension between abundance and scarcity. The islands are rich in rivers, forests, and coasts, but they are also isolated, subject to climate swings, and shaped by volcanic landscapes. To live here is to survive at the edge of continents, of seas, of possibility. The groups who step ashore 30,000 years ago do not inherit certainty. Instead, they must carve their existence from shifting terrain, learning with each season how to endure. Kyushu, likely among the first footholds, offers temperate woodland mixed with volcanic highlands. Here, deer and boar provide steady hunting, while rivers bring salmon and trout. Forests yield nuts in autumn, roots in spring, and berries in summer. Yet hazards are constant. Eruptions spew ash, rivers flood, and winters bring biting cold. The people who settle here must adapt not only to bounty, but also to disaster. Their survival depends on mobility, moving camps when resources dwindle, shifting strategies when climate changes. Farther north in Honshu, survival requires even greater resilience. The land alternates between open grasslands and dense forests as climate oscillates. Herds of elk and deer traverse the plains during cold phases, but as warmth returns, forests close in, reducing open hunting ground. Groups must switch from long-distance tracking to ambush in thickets, altering tools and strategies. Obsidian from volcanic uplands becomes essential for fine blades. To obtain it, people trek across ridges and valleys, carrying stone back to camps. These journeys demand stamina and knowledge, linking survival to movement across vast landscapes. In Hokkaido, the challenge deepens. Close to Siberia, the climate leans cold. Here, mammoth and giant elk sometimes roam, though perhaps in dwindling numbers by 30,000 years ago. Hunters in this northern edge must endure tundra winds, sparse vegetation, and long winters. Firelight in caves becomes central, not just for warmth, but for survival itself. Salmon runs in rivers provide seasonal abundance, yet winters press harshly, testing the limits of human endurance. Small groups may persist, but always at the edge of what is possible. The coasts add another dimension to survival. Shellfish beds, tidal flats, and estuaries provide reliable food with little risk. Families gather clams, oysters, and mussels, supplementing their diet when hunts fail. Fish caught with spears or nets offer protein in abundance. Yet the sea is not always kind. Storms sweep shores, tsunamis reshape coasts, and straits divide islands from one another. The same waters that provide food also isolate, cutting groups off from contact. To cross them requires daring and skill, but to ignore them risks hunger. Survival here means balancing the gifts and dangers of the sea. Archaeological evidence shows that small groups, not large populations, occupied Japan in this era. Stone tools and hearths suggest scattered camps, often revisited but never crowded. These bands may have numbered only a few dozen individuals each. Isolation shapes their lives. With limited contact, genetic diversity narrows. Social bonds must remain strong within groups to ensure survival. Yet, occasional exchange with outsiders is vital to prevent stagnation. Networks across water, fragile as they are, become lifelines as much as trade routes. One lesser-known detail is the possible seasonal abandonment of certain regions. Some valleys may have been used only in warm months, then left empty in winter. Others may have served as base camps for hunting expeditions, occupied only briefly. Archaeologists find layers of ash and stone flakes separated by long gaps, suggesting cycles of use and abandonment. This rhythm reflects adaptation to climate extremes, a strategy of moving not only within islands but sometimes away from them when survival demanded. Japan's early settlement was not permanent in the modern sense. It was fluid, responsive, and fragile. Mysteries persist about how sustainable these early lifeways truly were. Did populations grow steadily? Or did waves of decline and recolonization mark the millennia? Some scholars propose that repeated volcanic eruptions forced groups to flee or perish, erasing continuity. Others argue that small but steady communities endured, adjusting to each disruption. The evidence is incomplete. Sites vanish beneath volcanic ash or beneath the sea as coastlines shift. What remains are fragments, insufficient to draw certainty. The survival of these groups is proven, but the scale and continuity remain open questions. On the planetary scale, Japan's fragile settlements echo patterns across Ice Age environments. In Europe, groups persist at the margins of glaciers, clinging to refuges where game still roams. In Siberia, hunters follow herds across wind-swept plains, enduring brutal winters. In Southeast Asia, islanders adapt to tropical coasts, balancing storms and abundance. Everywhere, humans live at the edge of what climate allows. Japan is one node in this global pattern, shaped by its unique blend of forest, sea, and isolation. The tools of survival reflect this precarious existence. Stone blades are small, light, and easily replaced, allowing constant repair. Fire is carried carefully, sustained through storms and snow. Knowledge of plants, animals, and seasons is repeated endlessly, becoming the foundation of cultural memory. Nothing is wasted. Bones become awls, sinew becomes cord, shells become ornaments, and stone flakes become scrapers. This efficiency is not luxury, but necessity, a response to the fragility of life at the edge. The sea, always near, both isolates and connects. To the first settlers, it is a paradox. It cuts them off from the continent, yet it also provides pathways to obsidian sources and to distant islands. The ability to cross water, however rare, ensures survival by widening access to resources. Each raft launched into the straits represents a gamble against isolation, a step toward connection. In these acts lies the essence of survival at the edge, not avoidance of risk, but careful negotiation with it. Thus, the people of Paleolithic Japan embody resilience. They endure climate swings, volcanic eruptions, and geographic isolation. They adapt by moving, by exchanging, by remembering. Their survival is not heroic in a grand sense, but steady, practical, and unrelenting. In caves and coasts, in rivers and ridges, they leave behind stone, shell, and ash. These traces testify to lives lived at the very edge of human possibility, fragile yet enduring across millennia. The first humans who reached Japan more than 30,000 years ago vanish into the depths of time. Their tools lie buried in caves, their fires reduced to thin layers of charcoal, and their meals remembered only by fragments of bone and shell. No names remain, no voices, no direct line of descent we can identify with certainty. Yet, their legacy endures. By stepping onto the islands, they began a chain of human presence that would, over millennia, grow into the complex societies of later ages. They are the first islanders, and their choices set the stage for everything to follow. Their most immediate legacy lies in adaptation. To settle in Japan required learning to live in isolation, shaped by both land and sea. These first islanders adapted to volcanic landscapes, dense forests, and unpredictable straits. They learned when salmon returned to rivers, when nuts fell from trees, and where deer followed their paths. They mastered stone and fire, crafting tools from obsidian and maintaining hearths in caves. These skills, simple yet essential, formed the foundation for long-term survival. Without them, no later culture could have taken root. The continuity of stone technology illustrates this inheritance. The knife-shaped tools and blades of Paleolithic Japan evolve into the microblades and composite points of later periods. Archaeologists trace a line of innovation that, while altered by new influences, grows from the practical knowledge of these earliest settlers. The spark struck from stone in a dark cave 30,000 years ago is, in a sense, the same spark that lights the hearths of later Jomon villagers. Continuity does not erase change, but it preserves memory in technique. The presence of obsidian in distant sites also reflects an enduring legacy. By seeking and transporting volcanic stone, the first islanders established a pattern of mobility and exchange that later societies expanded. The networks across water, fragile but real, foreshadow the maritime connections that would define Japan for millennia. From small rafts crossing narrow straits, a trajectory begins that will one day see seafarers navigating far coasts. The courage to treat the sea as a pathway rather than a barrier is among the most profound gifts of these early settlers. One lesser-known detail is the role these first islanders played in shaping ecosystems. By hunting deer and boar, gathering plants, and lighting fires, they altered the balance of forests and plains. Though their numbers were small, their presence left marks: burned patches of woodland, reduced populations of certain animals, and middens of shell that changed soil composition. Archaeologists studying pollen and sediments sometimes detect these subtle shifts. They remind us that even the earliest humans were not passive inhabitants. They interacted with their environment in ways that carried consequences forward in time. Mysteries remain about their fate. Did their communities persist steadily, growing into the populations that later became the Jomon? Or did waves of new arrivals replace or blend with them? Genetic evidence suggests complexity, with influences from both northern and southern Asia entering Japan in later periods. Yet whether continuity or replacement dominates, the earliest settlers opened the door. They proved the islands could be inhabited, and that knowledge alone is a legacy. Later groups, arriving by sea or land bridge, followed paths first walked by these pioneers. On the planetary scale, the first islanders of Japan stand alongside other pioneers of Ice Age humanity. Around the same time, groups settle in the Americas, crossing Beringia and moving into unpeopled continents. In Europe, hunters adapt to glacial valleys, leaving art in caves. In Australia, humans spread across deserts and forests, building lifeways that endure for tens of millennia. The Japanese case is part of this larger story, the transformation of isolated lands into homes, carried out by small bands of determined people. Everywhere, human survival reshapes the map of possibility. The voices of climate, described earlier, also shape their legacy. By enduring cycles of cold and warmth, by surviving volcanic eruptions and shifting seas. The first islanders model resilience. Later populations inherit this lesson. When sea levels rise after the Ice Age, drowning coastal plains and isolating Japan more fully from the continent, humans remain. They adapt, drawing on the memory of earlier endurance. The legacy is not only material but cultural, the capacity to adjust to change, to persist at the edge of certainty. Firelight in caves captures the essence of this inheritance. Each hearth, layered with ash, marks a moment when life was sustained against darkness. These hearths multiply across time, forming a chain that stretches unbroken into later eras. Though the people who lit them are gone, the act of making fire, of gathering around flame, is shared by all who followed. The first islanders passed down not their names, but their practices. In this way, their legacy is universal, tied not to identity, but to survival. Shells beneath the earth carry another part of their legacy. In middens and ornaments, they show that humans in Japan valued both sustenance and symbolism. To eat from the sea, to adorn with shells, to carry tokens inland, these practices continued into later ages, expanding into elaborate traditions of the Jomon. The first beads pierced from shells foreshadow the rich symbolic life that would flourish thousands of years later. From simple beginnings, Complexity grows, but the roots lie deep in the earliest settlements. The legacy of the first islanders is also one of silence. They left no words, no images on cave walls, no monuments of stone. Their story is reconstructed only from fragments of tool, shell, and ash. Yet within this silence lies power. It invites discovery, it sustains wonder, and it reminds us of the fragility of memory. Their absence of voice challenges us to listen closely to the earth itself, the soil, the charcoal, the obsidian. In this way, their legacy is not only historical, but reflective. It teaches humility before the limits of knowledge. Thus, the first islanders of Japan endure in multiple ways: in stone technology passed forward, in networks across seas, in subtle shifts of ecosystem, in symbolic shells, and in the quiet persistence of survival at the edge. Their direct faces are gone, but their impact shapes the deep foundation of human life on the islands. Every later culture in Japan, from Jomon to modern, stands upon ground first walked by them. Their legacy is presence, the proof that humans could live, adapt, and endure in a land once thought unreachable. The mystery of their arrival may never be solved. The details of their lives may remain hidden, but their footsteps remain imprinted in soil, their sparks preserved in charcoal, their choices reflected in the continuity of human life. The first islanders carry Japan into the human story, and in doing so, they remind us that survival, adaptation, and persistence are themselves legacies, carried forward not by words but by endurance. The story of the first islanders drifts now into quiet. Their stone blades lie buried, their fires long extinguished, their paths erased by forests and seas. Yet their presence endures, carried forward in the memory of earth. Obsidian still glints on mountain slopes, shells still rest in soil, caves still hold the soot of ancient fire. These are the faint but enduring traces of lives lived at the edge of an Ice Age sea. The great questions remain unanswered. We do not know their names, their languages, or the stories they told by firelight. We do not know whether they came by accident or by design, or how many times they crossed the waters that divide continent from island. Much of their world lies drowned beneath modern bays, hidden in silence. Yet the mystery itself is part of their legacy. It reminds us that history is not always complete, that some truths rest forever beyond reach. What endures is the knowledge that they were here. They faced cold winds, shifting forests, and dangerous seas. They adapted, endured, and left marks still visible to us 30 millennia later. Their legacy is not in monuments, but in survival itself. Each fragment unearthed is a whisper across time, reminding us of the resilience of humanity. In this quiet reflection, the story closes. The voices of climate grow still, the fires fade, and the sea laps against shores that have changed beyond recognition. Yet, in the stillness, the memory of the first islanders remains, a part of the long and unbroken story of humankind.